Good morning, world. Today I'm going to talk about something that our family went through, and this is going to be from the mom's perspective because it wasn't my experience. Part of it is my experience, but I'm going to be talking about my daughter's experience, the testimony that she gave me about what she experienced, as well as my end of it as a parent. And in general, what this video is about is information for parents who are looking at the same thing, and my warning to you about this organization. And I would not send my child, or it wouldn't be a child, it would be a young adult at this point. They would technically be out of high school, so probably 18 or 19 years old. So I would not send my young adult to Circuit Riders if I had a say in it. Them being adults, whether or not you have say in their life at that point is going to depend on the family. But I think you get what I'm saying. We can advise them, but, they're going to do what they're going to do. So first of all, before I get too far into this, Circuit Riders, if you've never heard of it before, because I had not, as a matter of fact, I hadn't heard of YWAM either, but if you know what YWAM is, it's much more known, I think, out in the religious or Christian circles. It's Youth with a Mission, and it's a mission-based program where, and Circuit Riders is the same thing. Circuit Riders was birthed out of YWAM in Kona, Hawaii, I believe is where it started, and it was in 2011 or 2012. So basically what they do is they wrangle in new high school graduates who are, maybe without a purpose or without direction, or basically kids that aren't in college, or sometimes it's kids that are going to be going to college, but, not quite yet. And so, and the reason for that is it's not like they're targeting a certain kid or young person. It's that they're targeting somebody that has the time. If you're in class, if you're in college, you can't do this program, because what they do is they send you to, the program is based in Huntington Beach, California, and they send you there for 2 months, and you basically live in a house. My daughter had 13 or 14 roommates, and they live in a house together. They go to classes together. They worship together, and they're supposed to learn basically a certain skill set. You can pick and choose if you want to focus on music, if you want to focus on speaking, if you want to focus on the background kind of stuff like filmmaking, or I believe those are the three. There may be more, but those are the three that I remember. But, they take your skills and show you how to use them for the kingdom. And also there's mission training. So their hopes are that you're either going to join Circuit Riders as, I can't remember what they're called, like the mom or dad, either a house parent or somebody that serves, whether you go on the road or you serve there in Huntington Beach, or that you will get into a mission program and go to another country. And I'm not sure if Circuit Riders has their own mission program in that capacity, or if they kind of funnel kids into associated mission programs. I don't know how that works, because my daughter didn't go that far with it, and I'll tell you why. So you spend these 2 months getting all this training, and like I said, you're supposed to focus on one thing. My daughter, even though she's a musician, she decided that she wanted to focus on speaking. So she should have gotten some specialized training on, public speaking, and how to basically, if she were to share her testimony and things like that, how would she be more effective, and different things that she could speak about. And it would be sort of like, I would think, taking a debate class or a public speaking class in college. You know, just about everybody takes public speaking in college. And so that was her focus. And so before we get her to California, I'm going to give you some background information. And I'm going to cover more of what Circuit Riders is, and I'm going to tell you what she was told. So she made some friends through our church, I guess. There is a group of young people in our city who are involved in some different ministries. And those ministries are very Circuit Riders and YWAM friendly. And the friends, it was a friend group that she got pulled into, basically. And they would do different activities together. I'm just going to leave it at that. They would just do fun stuff, and it was her friend group. She graduated high school, and these were the people she was hanging out with. They were doing worship, you know, all these different, very innocent, very, you know, benign activities. No problem with any of that. But I noticed that she started coming home and saying things like, you know, I would hear different friends' names, and this friend would have words for her, and she would talk about prophesying and all these different things. And then one summer she went to one of their, it's kind of like a summer camp. I wanted to say it was like a week long or maybe 2 weeks long. I can't remember, but she went to that and then really got fed a lot of the information about these kinds of charismatic ideology, I guess is the best way to say it. And now my daughter has basically grown up in the church. You know, she was baby dedicated in a Southern Baptist church. She's saved. She was baptized. There was maybe a few years when she was pretty young that we weren't in church, and then most of her elementary, well, I would say middle school and up, she was in a church, and she had really good teachers. She had really good influence outside of the home that, you know, taught her that she should read her Bible daily and that kind of stuff. Really, really good teachers. She still speaks about those people today and says, hey, if this person hadn't done this back when I was in, you know, high school, I don't know where I would be, because, you know, she had studied her Bible a lot. So when she was doing these different programs, I don't know how early on she knew something was a little off. Like, I think there was always a doubt in her mind that some of the stuff she was hearing was not stuff that she had read in the Bible. And so I think all along the way there was something that was telling her no, but all of her friend group was going along with this, and so she started doubting her intuition and what she knew about the Bible, and even probably what God was telling her, because why would all of these nice people and all of her friends lead her astray? So what ended up happening was she was at an event. It was a worship event. I think every Friday they have these worship things that they were going to, and somebody came and spoke about, I don't remember if it was YWAM or Circuit Riders, but they're so related it's really irrelevant. So at some point she said, this is what I'm going to do. This is how much it costs, and this is what the program is. And so from her understanding at that point, the program was 6 months long. I don't know where that number came from. It probably came from one of the people that was telling her about it, and maybe they estimated and said it's a 6-month commitment. But anyway, so it was 6 months in her mind. She knew it would be going to California. She knew what the cost was, and she knew what she was going to learn there, and she knew she had the time. She didn't have anything else that she was set to do at that point. She was working part-time, and she was just trying to figure out, you know, how she was going to get the money. And she applied. She got accepted. None of her friends, none of the people in the friend group that the charismatic friend group went. She was the only one, I believe. There was another one that went later on after she came back, but I thought it was interesting. Now, a lot of those kids were college students. They were in and out college students. Some were, full-time college students, and then some were like, yeah, I don't like this, and then they would quit. But, that's how young adults are generally. They were all 20 or under, maybe a little bit over 20, so that age, they're just trying to figure out what they're going to do. So she was the one that said, I'm doing this, and, moving on ahead with it. So I, at the same time that she was, worrying about the money, was doing research because I had never heard of Circuit Riders. So I got online, of course, and I Googled it, and couldn't find anything. There was not much out there. I found some stuff on YWAM and the negative parts of YWAM, but at this point I said, well, I wonder if Circuit Riders took what YWAM was doing, got rid of that negative stuff, and is maybe doing it differently. And maybe it's more in line with our biblical beliefs and what YWAM was, and that's kind of what I hoped for. And I just thought, my daughter, she has a good head on her shoulders. I know she knows her Bible. I have confidence that if there was any red flags or anything telling her no, that she would hear that no and she would move on that no and try to figure out more rather than just full steam ahead going into this. So because I couldn't find any research and any negative stuff, and she was moving ahead with it. She was an adult. I can't remember how old she was. She was either 18 or 19. She had a birthday while she was out there. And I don't remember if it was 19 or 20, but I'm pretty sure she turned 19 out there. So, still a young adult, but she was always pretty smart, and how bad could it be? So what ended up happening was she had some friends, give her money. It was, I can't remember, I want to say it was like $7,000 ish. Around that, but she's thinking 6 months, $7,000 for all the training, for excuse me, for the housing, for the experience, and then after the 2 months, and I think she thought it was 4 months in California. First of all, when they said the 6 months, I think she thought in California would be 4 months. So, she, after the time in California, you come home for a little bit, and she came home, it was Thanksgiving or Christmas or both. I think it was Christmas. She was home for Christmas. And then left again and went out on a tour, which I'll talk about later. But let's say we'll just leave it at it was $7,000. That's in the ballpark. So she ended up going to some of the church, or one church in particular that was very supportive of Circuit Riders, and was able to do a talk about what she was doing and why. And there was a family that wanted to support Circuit Riders, the people, the young people going to Circuit Riders, and I want to say they gave her over $4,000. So that was a big chunk of it. And then she got a bunch of little donations. And then my sister covered the rest of what she needed to go on the trip. So she got all the money together and, had it sent in. All that was taken care of. And then she went out to Circuit Riders. She went out to Huntington Beach. She, like I said, had, I think, at first 13 roommates, and then I think eventually it was 14 roommates. Now, first I want to talk about her experience in the house, because that was probably the best part of the experience at all. She told me in the 2 months that they were there was not one fight. Imagine 14, we'll just say 15 girls living in one house, there never being a fight or an argument. We're talking girls that are sharing rooms, 2 or 3 girls in a room. They can only have so much stuff because there's not enough room to put everything. So she basically went with one suitcase, and then I had to send some of her supplements out to her that she couldn't pack, and a few other things that she realized she needed. But for the most part, you're living out of a suitcase, maybe shoved under your bed because, you know, that's the only room you have. So the girls that she was housing with were amazing, amazing people, probably very similar to her. You know, they're mission focused, they're kingdom focused, and young Christians who are all kind of, you know, they're looking to do the same thing. So that part was amazing. She made some great friends out of it, like really, really good people. No complaints about that at all whatsoever. So the training was, so they basically would get up and go to like a corporate training kind of thing where they were all learning out of these books. When she came back, she had, it was like 4 or 5 different books, like thin books, almost like workbooks that the Circuit Riders program put together on various different topics. They would go to training, they would, or training Bible class, I don't know what you would call it, classes. They would go to classes, and they were on different subjects. Kind of like, you know, if you go to church camp, you go hear this person talk, you hear that person talk, and, you know, a lot of times it was the same person, you know, talking at certain times, whatever. So they would do, a part of their day was that, a part of their day was worship, and a part of their day was, I believe, getting the training that they were supposed to be getting in the track that they selected that they wanted to focus on. I don't know how much, how the day was broken down, how much time they spent in each of those different things, but that was their general day. And then I guess they would have some days off and things. You know, there were certain codes, like you could only wear certain things, and like, you know, she had to wear a one-piece bathing suit, things like that. So it was pretty, I would say, conservative. So a conservative, charismatic situation. Now, we were not charismatic. She was not charismatic growing up. So all this was pretty new to her. So I will say that as she got more and more into this, the more she soaked in what she was being taught, she was becoming more doubtful about what she was learning. And I don't know to what degree. I'm hoping one day that she will share her testimony on this, because she knows the specifics. But she did tell me later that the more she was exposed in learning and hearing, the more she was feeling uncomfortable about what they were teaching, and it just didn't sit right with her. It didn't feel right. It wasn't something she could put her finger on, but she knew that there were things that weren't correct. Like her spirit just knew, this isn't right. Now, while she was out there, she decided, this is part of the charismatic movement, I believe, as well, the health and wellness. Like, if you have Jesus, then you're going to be healthy. You're not going to be sick. You can't have Jesus and be sick. You can't have the Holy Spirit in you and have anything wrong with you. If you are right with God, then you're not going to have any kind of health problem. This is what they lead you to believe. When you reach this certain level, you're not going to be sick anymore. And so she felt like she could do whatever she wanted and she would be healthy because of her spiritual health. And when she got out there, there was another roommate that had very similar health problems, but that roommate was even worse than my daughter. She was on multiple medications. My daughter was able to use supplements, and this girl was on multiple medications. And that girl ended up stopping all of her medication. And my daughter was still taking her supplements, but she went out there gluten-free, knowing that she needed to be gluten-free in order to be healthy, and she just started eating everything. So it didn't hit her right away, but she thought, well, you know what? I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do Jesus got my back. I'm going to be healthy. And that's not what ended up happening, of course, because that's just not the way it works. So the longer she's out there, the sicker she's getting again. She's eating things she shouldn't be. She's not being careful with her diet like she knows she should be, because she's convinced that she doesn't really need to do that anymore. So as she's going through this experience, there's a lot of things she can't participate in because she gets up in the morning and, is barely functioning. So she does as much as she can, and I personally think, y'all know how God works. If you're a Christian, these things just, in hindsight, you can look back and say, that's really interesting. But was this God telling her, keeping her from learning more? Was it God pulling her out a little bit and being like, girl, don't go. You don't need to be there. You don't need to learn this. Today they're talking about something I don't need you to hear. Do you know what I mean? I do believe God works in that way, and I'll tell you in a second what happened with me while she was out there. But in any case, that whole health and wellness, part of the charismatic was not working for her, and she was missing out on some of the experience out there. She told me when she came back of an experience. There was another girl at the same time my daughter was starting to have some doubts about what they were learning. There was another girl. The two of them connected. I don't believe it was a housemate of hers. I think she lived in a different house, but they at some point had a conversation. And the story is, this other girl the other girl was even more like, I think she was ready to go home. Because what happened was, there was a young man in Huntington Beach that, through Circuit Riders, through somebody that was out there, you're out there, you're a Christian, you're going to talk to other people, especially if you're out there doing this. You're going to, on a personal level, want to talk to people about Jesus, because that's just how you are. But at some point, through one of the young people that were out there, a local ended up getting saved. And I don't know to what extent his background was, but I would assume with kids today, there's so many that have never even been to church. So let's say that this guy was never a churchgoer. Who knows what his life was like, but he turned it around when somebody said whatever they said to him to make him realize, he needs Jesus. So, okay, so now he knows he needs Jesus. He wants to repent. He wants to change everything about his life, but how does he go about doing that? He has no earthly idea. I know a lot of people who go to church for a part of their life, they maybe backslide, and then when they come back around, they kind of have a background and experience in what they need to do going forward. But this kid just didn't know. He needed some discipleship. He needed some guidance, and he told this young lady, hey, I don't know what to do next. Well, this young lady, of course, doesn't live in Huntington Beach. She is from wherever she's from, and she reaches out to one of the people that works for Circuit Riders that lives in Huntington Beach and is part of the program. And she says, hey, and she wants to go to a guy because this guy needs a male role model, a mentor, somebody that can, help him figure out what he needs to do. And she goes to the guy from Circuit Riders and says, hey, there's this young man. He just got saved. He doesn't know what to do, where to go. What is there a church? Like, what do we do here locally for these people that are getting saved? And the Circuit Riders, I would say employee, I don't know how else to say it, basically said, that's not really what we do. And he had nothing to offer her. And at that point, that young lady, who probably was already having doubts herself, kind of like my daughter, was like, what is happening here? Because that's ridiculous. well, how do you live here in Huntington Beach and not have a church we can send him to, not have a program that he can get involved with, a Bible study? There's not, somebody, even if they're not involved with Circuit Riders, that's here that that can mentor these people. Like, what is happening? And so she, eyes opened, she said, this is not making any sense. She pretty much was out at that point. I'm pretty sure she finished out the program, but she, with skepticism, she probably kept it to herself and finished out the program. I don't even know if she went on tour after that, because some kids do leave. Some kids, for whatever reason, sometimes they get in trouble and they get sent home. Sometimes they, wake up and don't want to finish it out. It's kind of like, you realize you're participating in something that is not sitting well with you. Why would you carry it through unless you're like, well, I already paid for it, so I might as well. But I don't know what she ended up doing. I do know that my daughter told me that the two of them were like the only two that she knew of that were like, what are we doing here? And, but at the same time, my daughter was still trying to, get the most out of it, see the best in it. And she had all these friends in the house, sort of like her friend group back home. All these other people are doing awesome and not seeing issues with it. And I'm just going to kind of keep it in the back of my mind and, go forward. Like I said earlier, I tried to do my research before she went, because I had no idea what she was, what this program was, and couldn't find anything, and I trusted her instinct. That's why I sent her off. Somehow, at some point, something came across my YouTube feed, my suggestions, the algorithm. Y'all know how that works. When you research something, things start popping up. And I don't even know what came up first, but while she was gone, I basically was an empty nester, and I was doing a lot of projects around the house that I had not been doing because, like, for instance, her bathroom, she was using the bathroom, so I didn't want to, do stuff on it. She was gone, so I could do all these projects, and was listening to YouTube videos about all kinds of different things. And eventually, I am getting all these videos about the charismatic movement, why I left the charismatic movement, and speaking against the charismatic movement. And a lot of the things that I was hearing was similar to what the things that my daughter was coming home and saying before she left for Circuit Riders. A friend spoke a word over me, and things of that nature, but and also the health thing, like that she could be healed. That was the whole, her eating whatever she wanted to because she could be healed. And there was those two things, and also something that I noticed, I haven't mentioned this yet, but these programs, and also our local, the movement that's happening in our community, they use worship to get people, and they do a lot of worship. Like, that's almost seems like it's their main focus. And I think that's how she got pulled in, to be honest with you, because she is a musician. She sings, she plays guitar, and, she's very musically inclined, and I think that's what sucked her in. But so I'm learning all this stuff, and at some point, the thought literally crossed my mind, oh my gosh, did I just send my daughter off to a cult? And I was worried. Now, I had heard from her, and she was out there and she was settled, but it occurred to me, I could have sent her out there, and the people that met her from getting off the plane literally could have been cult leaders. And honestly, it kind of is a cult. If I'm being completely honest, it for sure is a cult, but not in the way that they're going to like trap you there and, they live in a commune kind of thing and they can't get out. It's more of, I think, brainwashing It's a cult of the mind rather than physically detaining somebody. You know, when you think of a cult, you think of people being, you have to go in and break them out kind of thing. And it's not that way, but it does affect the mind in a way that the cult is more in their mind than, you know, kind of physically holding them captive. So I'm hearing all these videos and I'm like, oh my gosh, but I'm learning. Now here's what I think. While she was gone and I had the quiet in my mind to hear what I needed to hear, that was 100% God. Because I still to this day don't know why those videos started popping up. And it was such an intensive learning experience for me, because I was at that point at a church for 6 years, a church that I thought was a good church. And, you know, all churches have issues, and every church is fit for different people. And sometimes a different time in your life, you need a different church. You might need a smaller church. You might need a larger church. You know, that's why all of those churches are there. But 100% that those videos coming into my view was God showing me what I needed to know about what she was experiencing and what I was going to need when she came back. And what I mean by that is, like I said, it's a cult of the mind. Her mind was so, I don't even know, entangled, I think would be the best word, like just a mess of what she had been taught before, the new stuff she had learned, and how to kind of parse it out and figure out what is real and what is not. And so I'll get to that in a minute, but I just 100% believe God used that time and used YouTube to give me the information that I was going to need. And so at the time, I just thought this is all really new and interesting information. But as I realized how necessary it was, I was like, thank you, Jesus, because without all of that, if I had not had any of that and she had come back and told me the things that she told me, then I would be completely clueless, would not have any idea how to help her. And I was weeks and months ahead of the game because I already knew what to expect. And I basically, when she did come home from the whole experience, I basically was waiting for her to reveal to me what she was struggling with, because I had suspicions that she was. Here's the point in the video where I need to tell you what all of this is about. So one of the things that I was learning mostly about, other than just charismatics in general, but I had never heard of the NAR, that's N-A-R, the New Apostolic Reformation, and what they are about, what they teach, things that have crept into the church, even just regular churches, in communities. I had no idea what this was, and you may not either. You may be going, what are you talking about? I didn't know what that is either. I'm not going to give you a lot of information on the New Apostolic Reformation, but I want you to look it up yourself, and I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to give you a bunch of information. Exactly the way God worked through YouTube to provide me with what He wanted me to see, He's going to give you the same thing. Google it, get on YouTube, read, listen to videos, because there's a specific video out there that you're going to see that's going to speak to you differently than the videos that I saw. And I don't want to give you 15 videos or 15 articles when there's one article that you're going to read everything you need to know and be like, oh my gosh, what in the world? I had no idea this was going on. Now, the reason I didn't know about the NAR is because I was going to my church. I was raising my kids. I'm a single parent. I'm not looking for articles to read about what's going on kind of in the Christian world out there. I'm learning the Bible. I'm, trying to live the Christian life, homeschooling my kids, living my life and just trying to make it through the day like everybody else and pay my bills. So I had never heard of it before, and it's been around for a while. But what I learned was that a lot of the worship practices, I guess is the best way to say it, are creeping into churches. And when kind of confronted with it, I thought, oh my God, yeah, the whole worship style of churches has changed. And, we call it contemporary worship. But the reality is, like, the whole feeling of worship has changed. And even the Christian church that I was going to, they teach the Bible. I don't know how much of this movement has crept into that kind of stuff. But the main thing is the worship. I'm going to use that as an example because you may see things in your church that has changed. And one of those things is the contemporary worship, how, the instruments have changed. You don't have the choir anymore. You're not using hymn books. It's basically a band. It's more entertainment focused. But a lot of the songs that churches are singing now are coming from Bethel. Do some research on Bethel Church in Redding, California. I believe it's Redding. Also Elevation Worship and Hillsong. All of these churches are NAR affiliated. False teachers. There are so many Christian teachers or Christian authors who are false teachers. Once you look at the New Apostolic Reformation, you'll see all the names. You'll be like, what? A new one that has kind of fallen into the NAR is Francis Chan. A lot of people that have loved his books. He's kind of changed a little bit, and he definitely has been influenced by that movement. And that's one that is kind of a shocker to me because, and maybe he was all along, just a little bit not as extreme, but now he's kind of gotten extreme and is affiliated with those people. But so in your churches, like, the worship is getting dark. They turn the lights down. If you watch like Hillsong especially, Bethel probably does it too, but Hillsong is the one I really like to use as an example because they basically have like rock concerts. They have the smoke and, all this stuff. But the biggest thing is how the worship has changed is how the music is very repetitive. A lot of the songs are not biblical that are coming out of Bethel and even if they are, even if you think they're biblical, churches should not support them by using their music because they do get paid when churches use their music. But in any case, it's the worship style. And I don't want to get too far into that, but if you watch videos, if you do some research on this and you look at the worship style, you'll see it's a lot of hands up, a lot of swaying, a lot of trance-like behavior. Now, like at my church, it was sing the song, go on to the next song. It wasn't, let's play this song for 15 minutes and, stay in this kind of trance. It's gotten weird, if that makes sense. There's a lot of jumping around. There's a lot of, let's get excited for Jesus kind of thing. It's that the generation, this is a new generation. They're going to worship differently. And well, the differentness is leading to a lot of, not necessarily worshiping the Holy Ghost, not worshiping God, worshiping a different spirit. One thing you want to look into with the NAR is the Kundalini spirit. It's related to Hinduism. So the Christian or the charismatic worship looks very similar to Hindu worship. And gosh, there's so much more to talk about that I could talk about. But essentially, there's a movement, the NAR movement, pulling Christians away from true Christianity and more into an ecumenism, where Catholics are joining, Mormons are joining. They're all kind of going together, and this is kind of end times prophecy, I guess. And all these people are going to be pulled into a one religion, and the people who don't go along with that, or the Christians who don't go along with that, are really going to be, I guess you would say, the remnant who aren't falling for what is being, I guess, changed. So eventually the quote unquote Christians will not be Christians. They're going to follow a false Christ, and then the people who are not getting sucked into this are going to be the ones who are really persecuted for not going along with the majority of Christians who are going to fall into this new religion. So the people the true Christians are not going to fall, and they are going to be persecuted. They're all about unity, and there is a unity. Like, we should unite as believers and biblical doctrine, and not uniting with cults. Like when they talk about unity, what they are talking about, here's one example, they will say that Mormons are Christians and that we can unite with Mormons. So, sorry, that's just crazy to me, but that's where they're headed. So division comes when we believe biblical doctrine and we know the Bible and we follow the Bible, and you're wanting to take it to this, quote unquote, new level, and you're not even in the Bible anymore. That's where the division happens. And Jesus said he came to divide. So this isn't like coming out of left field. That's exactly what's going to happen in the church. We've already divided ourselves, about a lot of different topics, but this is the big division. Like, this is going to be like the final division. So you want to be really careful what you're listening to and who you're listening to, because I see grown adults doing the same thing that happened to my daughter. When your friends start moving in this direction, you want to go along with your friends. And, it's like a social thing. And my saving grace, I think, is that I'm introverted, and I have very surface level acquaintances, and I'm not that kind of person that is going to be swept into a social kind of movement that I can get swept up in. And I can see why my daughter did, because she's super social, loves being around people, loves talking, and and she's a creative person too. They love creative people. They use music, as a way to reach people, and art as well. I think art might have been one of the tracks that Circuit Riders did. I'm not sure, but even doing videos and things like that. That's a creative way of reaching people. So they use those. Creative people are more spiritual. No, that's not the right word. They're not more spiritual, but they're more open to supernatural, I think, and so they're easier to influence. And easier to kind of, when they hear supernatural things happening, it speaks to them more than it's going to speak to somebody that's kind of a skeptic, I guess. And so, me not being swept away by all these friends, and I'm watching friends go, in that direction and totally sucked into it. And it's really hard to watch. But so what I'm saying is, do your research on the NAR, the New Apostolic Reformation, and find out as much as you can, and just be wary of it. So how does this apply to circuit riders? Everything that they're teaching is from NAR ideology. And I don't want to get into too much of that, but it's not biblical. So I'm going to go back to my daughter's experience and tell you problems with circuit riders other than what they're teaching to the kids that is not right, but the program itself. Okay, so she came home for Christmas. I think she was here for 2 weeks. I could tell she was not doing well health-wise. I knew she was struggling, but she wanted to finish out the program. And what was happening next was they were going to be, so you got to choose which tour you wanted to do and what part of the country. I think you maybe put in 2 or 3, and then they would try to give you your top one. And because she is from the Southeast, she said, maybe I'll do the Southeast. And so she got that, came home for 2 weeks, packed for, the weather. Of course, it was winter, so it was going to be cold regardless. And basically what they do is they pack a passenger van, like I want to say 14 people in a van, and then they have a trailer that carries their stuff. So at this point, she's living out of, I don't even think it was a suitcase. It might have just been a duffel bag. I can't remember, but just at least one bag they're living out of. So basically what they do is they travel around to different college campuses and also churches. I don't know that she went to any church youth groups. I can't remember, but some of them do. If there's a church that supports circuit riders and wants circuit riders to come and speak to their youth group or just hold, basically it's open to the community, they will go to churches as well. Anybody that's willing to have them come and worship and speak to their people, they're open to it. So this tour this is where she starts realizing this is not a 6-month program, because she was in California for 2 months and then came home for 2 weeks and then was going to be on the tour for, I don't think it was 2 months. I want to say it was 10 weeks. I could be wrong about that, but it's not really relevant. In any case, she's hitting the road with all these people in a van traveling around, and where they would stay was the churches and the colleges would have people that could put them up in houses, or they would have it set up ahead of time so they had somewhere that they would sleep. It was usually in somebody's, sometimes it was, hey, the family's out of town, so during that week, so we can use their house, and they would put all, 15 girls or whatever, however many, if it was 15 people and it was boys and girls, so it was maybe, let's say it was half and half, so they would maybe have so many people in a house, and I'm almost positive they kept the boys and girls separate, other than riding in the van. The parent, there would be they would call them mom and dad, people that kind of served regularly and permanently with circuit riders, would drive and would be in charge of the groups, making sure they had, followed the codes and things that they were supposed to, so people weren't getting in trouble. And I think this is where a lot of I shouldn't say a lot, but if you were going to get in trouble doing something you shouldn't do, it was probably going to be on the tour, because you have more freedom, you're traveling around, kids just do stupid stuff sometimes. So the mom and dad would be the ones to be like, yeah, this isn't going to work, you got to go. So let's say it was the 2 of them and like 13 other people. So basically what they would do, they would bring this worship experience, which is a lot of I don't even know how to describe the music, very repetitive, a lot of crooning, I guess. Just a lot of it is like making noise rather than singing. A lot of the swaying and trance-like worship. And I've seen video, and I just thought this is kind of weird, but I guess young people, this is before I learned more about the NAR movement, and eventually I realized what was going on during this and during this kind of worship, and it's just not biblical worship. It's the best way to say it. And so they would do this kind of worship, and then somebody would speak, probably share testimonies, if you can imagine. She never really told me, and it may have been different at every location, but she never really told me exactly how it was broken down. But I've seen enough video to kind of figure out that that's what was happening. So with her experience personally, she went to Circuit Riders to learn how to be a speaker. She never once was given the opportunity to speak. So what they sell you is you're going to learn how to do this, and then you're going to be able to use that when we go on tour. So, if you think like a college student, you take the class and then you kind of have an exam at the end, or a program or something that you can kind of show that you learned what you were supposed to. And that's what tour was supposed to be, that they learned everything that they were supposed to, or that they practice it and, get good at it, I guess, because they're able to practice what they were learning. She told me that what she and others were doing essentially was they would work the table. They would have like a table where they would have information and probably sell stuff. I don't know, maybe like sell T-shirts or music CDs or things of that nature. But she was more setting up the table and working at the table than doing anything else. One time she did get the opportunity to help lead worship, and she was excited about that. But other than that, she basically was kind of doing the grunt work. And from what I understand, the people that were doing the leading the worship and doing the speaking and things were the mom and dads. And I want to say that there were 2 vans that were traveling together. So it was a pretty big group. So maybe there were like 4 people that actually worked with Circuit Riders that were the mom and dad kind of people that would do that kind of work. So she personally did not get out of it what they were selling, and I don't know how many other people felt the same way. I'm sure there were people who were videoing that learned how to make videos and things like that. But as far as her track, I don't know that anybody else got the opportunity to use what they learned. So, but her personal experience was she paid for X, Y, and Z, and she maybe got X and Y. So not only was the program shorter than she thought it was going to be, because if you think about it, she justified spending $7,000 on a 6-month experience, and it turned out to be, all in all, around a 4-month, if that. So she was like, what just happened? What did I just, spend all that money on? But then, so on top of the $7,000 that at this point, she's calculating in her head, what is happening? Because they're staying for free in people's houses. How much could a van possibly cost to gas up and, drive? I don't know if they were rental vans or if somebody owned them or where the vans came from, but how much could it cost to do all this versus what I paid? And then sometimes if they needed to stay in a hotel for some reason, like maybe their housing fell through, they would make the young people on the tour pay so much money for the hotel rooms, which if I had known at the time, I would have gotten those people on the phone and said, no, these kids have already paid to, for their housing and everything. You guys figure it out, because what in the world? So she's starting to figure out. When she did get back, she talked to me about that, and she was like, she told me it's a financial ripoff. that the money's basically just going to support this organization who, in her experience, did not deliver what they said they were going to deliver. It was only 4 months. She didn't get to use what she had learned. Now, at the same time, I will say this. She was sick. I didn't say to her, hey, we want to let you speak, but you're not doing well, and, how can we get you healthy? Instead, what happened was they made her feel bad for being sick because it was her fault that she was sick, because if she was doing what she was supposed to be doing, not eating what she was supposed to be doing, or, taking care of her health, but if she was spiritually healthy, she would not be sick. That's how they kind of dealt with her and her illness. So after all this, I think that might have been the nail in the coffin for her, that, she's thinking, I've done everything I'm supposed to do, and I'm just getting sicker. And these people are telling me if I was spiritually right, I wouldn't be sick. She came home, and she's pretty quiet about everything. She was physically sick and did a lot of resting and sleeping and recovering from the tour. The next thing that happened, it was a few weeks later, there is an event, a stadium event associated with charismatics and Circuit Riders and YWAM and this whole movement. It's called the Send. So because of where we live, which is in the middle of the country, and the Send is in Kansas City, which is in the middle of the country, she was like, I got to go to the Send because all my friends are coming. So her roommates, the people that she went on tour with, they all lived all over the country. Some even in other countries. Like she had a friend that was Canadian that came to the U.S. to do this program. And I think she more wanted to see these friends again. She still loved these people, even though the experience was a little messed up. But so I'm sure at Circuit Riders in California, they promoted this event. And so she knew what it was. She knew it was going to be, after she got back from tour. And we even had a friend come stay here they all kind of traveled up to the Send together. And this was her social departure from this movement. She's in this stadium event that people, if you look it up online, people will praise this event and how awesome it is and how, blah, 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 fill in the blank. You'll see if you look it up. I can tell you the people that are affiliated with it except for one name. When I said this name to her, she said, "What's wrong with him?" And that's when I knew. I was like, oh, gosh. Okay, so she went to the Send, and they have all these speakers. They have all these musicians. They play that same worship music. Everybody gets in their trance. And so all the feelings that she was feeling in California when they were doing worship and the things that they were being taught and, all that was giving her weird feelings. When she went to the Send, she really was kind of removed from the rest of the friends she was there with, who were still all, they were all bought into this whole thing. And she kind of was able to see, it's not right. Spiritually, she felt it was not right. And she was able to see kind of from the outside what was going on. But the name that I mentioned to her, she still wasn't completely out of this movement. Todd White was there, and he's a poster child for who you do not want to follow. There's a lot of false teachers who are more sly, and you have to really pay attention to what they're teaching. He is so far out there. Oh my gosh. No. Just look up Todd White. He's one of the ones. He's just doing some crazy stuff out there. But so anyway, he is part of the Send. And when I mentioned his name, she still was bought in enough to where she said, "What's wrong with him?" And so, but she, after this event, she came home, and then we started talking, and I knew how conflicted she was. She started telling me different things, and I was able to, at this point, get the books that she had used in California, and I started flipping through them. I'm looking for keywords, I'm looking for names, I'm looking for all the things that I had learned through all these YouTube videos and what this movement was. I wanted to see what she was being taught. And a lot of it was very mission minded. Hey, you need to be sold out for Jesus. Your whole life needs to be, you need to have a ministry and, that kind of thing, which, nothing was crazy. Like, I think that's great to be very mission focused. And if you're going to be a missionary, especially, and even all Christians in their day-to-day walk should have a mission minded focus when they are dealing with people in society, and how they want to behave around them and share Jesus when they can and that kind of stuff, and just live for Jesus. And so there wasn't anything that jumped out, and I was like, there's got to be something in here. I know there's something in here. And then I started thinking, what if they're not putting it in their books, but they're teaching it through the lectures that they're doing? And I just kind of put that in the back of my mind, because I knew that there was stuff that was not in the books. And she had a lot of notes. They take a lot of notes. And I went through them a little bit, but I don't recall seeing anything crazy there either. So I kind of, put the books aside and was just more dealing with what she had gone through and how I was maybe able to help her with things going forward. So we would have just short talks here and there. And one of the things, the most important thing that I can share, that I don't think is very personal, I think it's very tragic, and this is what you need to hear as a parent considering this. She said, I don't even want to read my Bible anymore because I don't know how to read. I've been told so many things that were twisted, that were turned around, that I'm afraid to read it and discern for myself what the Bible says. So she recognized that they were taking Bible verses out of context and teaching incorrect doctrine using the same Bible that she had grown up reading. And so she really struggled with that. She took a break, I would say, and prayed and found her way back. I think it took some time. I think it took prayer, healing, removing from that social group the friends that had been sold out for this. She was still connecting with them on a social level, but not going to all the events as much. So I want to stop here for a second and tell you something that probably helped her get out of this movement for good. Essentially what happened when she returned from California and the Send, she really, I guess the friend group for her started falling apart. And it was more because she realized that a lot of these people were fair weather friends. They weren't reciprocating the friendship as much. She had a couple that, reached out to her quite a bit. Like if she didn't come to an event, they would, make sure she was okay and things like that. But slowly but surely, because, she knew that these people were really following a false doctrine, false teaching, and then they were also not really that great of friends, not being really Christ-like to one another. The friendships just kind of, a little by little, I guess, fell by the wayside. She did try to talk to some of them about, her concerns about the things that they were learning here in our town in different churches that had kind of fallen into the NAR movement and the worship that was happening, because in the worship that they were all going to, it was teaching the same theology, the same worship, I would say odd worshiping behaviors, and the things that they were teaching during the worship experiences. And so it was almost a blessing that these friendships started falling apart for me, because it was pulling her away from all of that false Christianity and more towards the biblical doctrine that she had grown up with and known and had, read in her Bible. And, some of these friends were the people who were giving her words and telling her, convincing her that she could be healed, or that she was healed, and, things that they did, some of them did tell her things that were correct, or that she felt were correct at the time. But the reality is, had she pursued that friend group longer, she would have gotten more prophecy from them, or false prophecy potentially from them, which could have been detrimental to her. So to me, it was a blessing that these friends weren't the best friends in the end, and she was able to break away from it. And like I have already said, it's such a social pull to get into something like this. It happens so innocently, because you have one friend, and that friend, hey, you want to go to this event with me? And then, it just grows and grows from there. And it could have gone way worse than it did. And, the charismatic movement, a lot of people come out of it because of the false prophecies that their friends give them, or people in that movement give them. One of the videos that I saw of people that had come out of the charismatic movement, their part of their reason was they were told by somebody they were having problems with infertility, and they were told by somebody, you're going to be pregnant by the end of the year, or have a baby, or whatever it was. When that didn't happen, they started thinking, how often are these people even correct? And they started kind of pulling out of it, thinking, okay, we're involved in something that is not panning out to be something that is a good thing. And so, she starts thinking about these friends that were giving her words, and people telling her that she was healed, and or that she should be healed. If she was on the level that she should be on with her beliefs, that she would be healed. And she started reading her Bible again, and realized that what they were saying was not fact. There are people who are Christian who are sick. There are people who are Christians who die from cancer and die from other diseases. And it's not because they didn't believe enough, and it's not because they didn't have enough faith. And all of this stuff started, her experience, paying attention, reading her Bible, praying. She realized she got back on the right road, and she realized that that whole program and YWAM are teaching nonsense. It's not biblical. They're teaching a worship style that is bringing on spirits that are not the Holy Spirit. They're worshiping spirits that are not the Holy Spirit. And also, all of these revivals that are happening on college campuses, they are being birthed from these programs. Whether it's Circuit Riders, YWAM, there's a number of different programs that they all kind of use the same terminology to pull kids in, making it look like it's, exciting and the next generation, and it's very energetic. We need you basically they're looking for a big revival, and it's geared toward that. And you have to be very, with all the ones that aren't the big names, you have to be very careful and ask a lot of questions and see what they're teaching, more so than I did, because like there's information on YWAM. I'm telling you about Circuit Riders. There's other smaller ones that have seen, hey, we can get money. It's basically a money maker. We can get money by doing the same thing that they're doing. We could do it on a smaller scale. It's a money maker. What did they do with $7,000 that my daughter paid, which essentially paid for 2 months in California and however many weeks, 10 weeks on the road in a van, where she was paying for her own food. She paid for her own food in both places. So basically it was room and board, 15 girls in a house in California, and I guess paid for gas on the road. That's a lot of money for what she got out of it. So anyway, a lot of other organizations are popping up. They come in my Facebook book feed all the time, or they used to. There's a lot of, not just geared towards students, but there's conferences, conference after conference after conference after conference. I finally got them all removed from Facebook. I, hide ad. I don't want to see them anymore. Now I'm kind of wishing I hadn't done that, because I feel like I'm out of the loop and don't know which ones to. I used to post negative things on their ads to warn people or put an angry face, but it's nice not seeing them. But at the same time, I feel like, are those things still happening? Because it's not in my feed. But back to the revivals. So what happens is a couple of things. These students who participate in YWAM and Circuit Riders, they don't all go on to do to be a missionary. Some of them will go on to be a full-time missionary. They go work in another country, or even some in the U.S. Some turn around and go work for the organization. They have to apply and go through this whole process, and they'll turn around and be a Circuit Rider leader or a mom and dad kind of thing, a house mom. And but I would say probably the majority of them go on to into the workforce, or into they go to college. So what we have is okay, first of all, let me back up. It doesn't take a program like Circuit Riders or YWAM to birth these revivals. It takes groups like what my daughter experienced before she went into Circuit Riders. It's the NAR movement, and it generally comes from false teaching in churches, or even individuals that go around and speak at churches, teaching things that people are like, hey, I like what he's saying, and they start following it, and they fall into that false doctrine. And so you have that going on, and then you have these organizations that are feeding this information to kids who they may not have had the prior experience that my daughter had. They may be going in, hey, they're looking for something to do for a gap year, and either they heard about it, or I don't know how kids end up there. It could be a similar experience that my daughter had. Or it could just be, hey, it's a Christian organization and I want to be a missionary, so I'm going to go do that instead of go to college this year. So however they get there, it's those programs, it's the false teachers. You can see them on YouTube. You can see them at the conferences. They've got books. There's books out there. There's so many books out there. But they're being taught all of this NAR ideology. And it's not just the students, but it's been around so long that college professors on Christian campuses believe this stuff and are teaching it and feeding it to the kids. So you might think you're sending your kid to a Christian university, but they're really going to a college that is full of NAR propaganda and false doctrine and, people who have been in that movement for a while, who are teaching it to the college students and creating these movements that are very worship focused, less gospel focused. The big one that stands out in my mind is the one in the past year at Asbury. That one was the most public. It was, I don't even know how many days it was on the news. It was very, very public, very big. And I knew from the get-go, I knew from day one where that revival came from. And you might be saying, well, what is wrong with the revival? If a revival is based off of false doctrine and false beliefs and even false worship, if I'm being honest, it's not a revival. It's a movement. It is almost more of it's a social event. It's a worship event. It is, okay, so Asbury in particular, I'm going to say this. In Kansas City, they have, I can't think of what it's called, IHOP. Sorry, International House of Prayer. And I believe, so I have a son, I don't speak about my son very often, I don't know why, but he's also a musician, and I think I learned from him about the 24-hour worship in Kansas City, and which I thought was so super cool when I first heard about it. Like, you can, at any time, no matter what your hours are that you work, you can go and worship. And the more I learned about all of this, the more I learned how worship focused they are. And not only worship, but not good worship. Very, I don't even know the right word for it, but when you see it, you'll know. And so when you have a revival that starts from worship, rather than starting from a word and preaching, good preaching, that Asbury started from a chapel. It was more of a speech than a biblical sermon, and it moved them. And then the worship started, and then the worship didn't stop. What we don't know that came out of Asbury was anyone convicted? Did anybody receive Christ? Did anybody repent? And that is what real revival is. Now, what is my problem with worship? I don't have a problem with worship. We're supposed to worship God. It's very, like, who doesn't like worship? And that is why they use worship. It's very easy to pull somebody in using worship, and they change the whole worship style, and now we're like, who are we even worshiping? But the real issue is, what does a Great Commission say? What are we called to do? Nobody talks about that anymore. They talk about it in the biblical churches that are teaching that are teaching the Bible and teaching real doctrine, and not pulling out a verse here and there and twisting it to, say what they want it to say. Yes, you're supposed to worship. It's a very small part of a church service. And when it becomes the main focus, and we think that we're doing something for God, when we're worshiping Him, here's my take on that. We are called to tell people about Jesus. We're supposed to be spreading the gospel. We're not called to worship for hours on end. We're not even called to go to Bible studies for hours on end. I know people who go to every Bible study that their church offers, because I think in their mind, at some point, I'm going to feel like I can spread the gospel, that I can tell my friend about Jesus if I have enough Bible behind me, and the more I understand it, the better I can tell people about Jesus. And the reality is, the second you're converted, you are equipped to tell somebody about Jesus. And as Christians who are spending hours every week in worship and going to Bible studies, which is a social event, we're not talking about reading your Bible and praying. We're talking about people going to Bible studies. There's a big difference there. When we're going to Bible study after Bible study after Bible study and worship, we're not in our communities serving, and we're not telling people about Jesus. We're surrounding ourselves with like-minded people, and we're turning inward and, kind of building our club, so to speak. Meanwhile, our neighbors are dying and going to hell. We are not being called to go and worship for 24 hours or to even play music for 24 hours. All of these things that are being set up are a distraction. There's worship in my city. They were actually trying to set up a 24-hour worship, and what's really ironic is COVID put a stop to that. I don't think it started back up. I don't think whoever was starting to work on that, I don't think it has built back up since COVID. God can use anything, and we all know what COVID is, but God is using that to speak to all of us and to our churches. And locally here in my community, I think God used it to put a stop to that, because He's not calling us to worship Him constantly. We have all of eternity to worship Him, and we will. But while we're here on this earth, we're called to tell people about Jesus, and we're not. I'm convicted about this as well. I can sit here and tell you, stop going to these worship services and tell your neighbors about Jesus and tell your coworkers about Jesus. But the reality is Satan has us all spending all this time in worshiping false Jesus. They're worshiping Satan, essentially. I shouldn't say that. They're worshiping other spirits. To me, if it's not Christ, it's demonic, so it doesn't even matter. But we're convincing ourselves that we need to know more about the Bible so that we can, if our friend says, hey, but what about this? We have to have an answer for that. Yes, you need to know the Bible, but there's nothing wrong with telling your friend, you know what? I don't even know the answer to that, but I know that I love Jesus and He has worked in my life, and it's a part of me that I just want to share with other people because it has made my life so much better that I have a hope. And then when everything goes wrong in my life and it falls apart, because it can, just because Jesus doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect. When things fall apart and I'm struggling with, a parent who's ill, or a sick child, or losing somebody, or losing a job, or all the things that can go wrong in this life, I've got Jesus telling me I can get through it because I've got Him. And that's what people need to know, that they need to have a hope. Because people that don't have Jesus and don't have that particular hope, life is so much harder for them. It's not that they have more struggles, it's that they don't have that hope to get them through them. And that's the biggest difference for me, being a Christian, having that hope and knowing that Jesus has my back no matter what. I remember when I was having a C-section and I was laying there on the table, and I was thinking to myself, I was praying, and I was like, I was just literally talking to God. And I thought, people that don't know Him, what do they lay here and think? And I don't know. Like, are they terrified? Are they, I don't know what they think, but I feel that was an eye-opener for me, because there's times in my life where I just know, no matter what happens right now, I know that God's got me, and God's got my baby. And I had hope that no matter what, He was going to get me through what was happening. And the reason it was an emergency situation, so there was definite reason for me to pray, and not just I'm having major surgery. I was scared for my baby at that point, and so I don't know what non-believers think in that situation, but would not want to be there. And I don't want my friends to have to be in situations where they, aren't talking to God and relying on God to get them through their struggles. So these revivals, I call them false revivals. They are very social, very surface, very worship based. And all I can tell you is if there was no fruit, then it wasn't a revival. Could there have been some kids that came out of that changed? Of course. But a revival, when you talk about a revival, it usually is, a lot of people, like all of the people are coming out of it changed. And that's not what's happening. Those people, those few kids who might have come out of it changed and saved, probably would have been saved regardless. And the revival is just I think it's a distraction. It's a way, it's a way for the NAR movement to say, see, revival is coming. There's all these revivals on the college campuses, and they're popping up because of this false biblical doctrine and false ideology that's being programmed into these kids. And I think, just to end this, that is the biggest problem with Circuit Riders, is we're taking kids who have real biblical doctrine, who have no earthly idea what else is out there and what else they could be taught that is false. Even I, as an adult, didn't know that this stuff was out there, and just didn't have the information. And yes, I Googled, I looked up. Circuit Riders keeps a lot of things quiet. I don't know how. I don't know. I mean, how many kids are coming out of it and being like, this isn't right? Like I said, it was maybe my daughter and that one friend that she knew. Those are the only ones we know of that came out of that particular, I think they do it like maybe 4 times a year, maybe more than that. But I don't see people posting online about it. I don't see, articles. I think they are told that they are not to, like they signed an NDA or something. I don't know, but my daughter has told me, I think we signed something that says we, don't go public with certain information. And I'm not sure, but I didn't sign anything, so I can say whatever I want. But, it took a while for my daughter to get back right to where she needed to be spiritually and mentally. And I don't want other kids to have to go through that. So, the best I can say is, if you are going to pick another program that is similar, do your homework, ask around. If you can't get any information about it, don't send your kid. And I know that they're adults at that point. They can do what they want, but I would discourage them. I would try to, give them advice and hope that they make the right decision. But the reality is, if they've got friends going, they may just go anyway. And just be wary about all the different programs and even revivals. If your kid calls you from college and says there's a revival, try to find out what's really happening, and if there is that going on your kid's college campus, and it could be a secular school, it doesn't have to be a Christian school. Just try to stay in tune to what your kid is learning while at college, and see how you can talk about things without pushing them away, because it can be touchy, but talk about things when they come home, or even send them encouraging notes and things that might keep them from going too far off course. I just remembered a story that I forgot to tell you earlier. This happened, I'm going to close with this. This happened a little while I believe my daughter was pretty much on the right road at this point. I can't remember when, but I came across a video about Kathryn Kuhlman. It wasn't about her. It was a video of Kathryn Kuhlman doing a sermon. If you don't know who she is, look her up. But this video I watched, she looked demonic. I could not even believe that anybody would follow this woman or believe in, or even let her speak at a church. She just looked demonic. I couldn't believe it. So I was telling my daughter, I said, you got to watch this video. And I said the name, and she said to me, oh yeah, very casually, oh yeah, they talk about her all the time at Circuit Riders. And I said, what? Yeah, she's in all the books. Now, I thought, I don't know if I knew the name Kathryn Kuhlman or if I knew to scour her books for that name, but I did go back in the books and I looked for her name in the books because I'm like, what were they and I did not find Kathryn Kuhlman in those books at all whatsoever. So what is happening, they're not putting, everything isn't in those books. What they're putting in the books is benign, biblical stuff that is not going to raise any red flags for you. And I'm telling you this because if you ask an organization, if you're researching it and you say, hey, can you send me the books that you're using? You can get those books, but that does not tell you anything about what they're going to be taught. So she thought, she heard her name enough to believe that her name was in those books. But the reality was they were talking about her constantly and teaching about her. And her name is probably in my daughter's notes. And it was ingrained enough for her to think that, you know, that person was part of the whole teaching and in the books and all that. So that is what, they know what they're doing. They know. They're not going to put things that you can Google in those books where you can, you know, raise red flags and be like, wait, what? Because if that woman's name had popped up when I looked up Circuit Riders, there's no way. I would have tied my daughter up and not let her go to California because holy moly. Or any of the other names. If any of the other names were in there. Or any of the other, if the New Apostolic Reformation, if they would tell people that that is what they're a part of, and they won't. People won't. They don't want to be associated with it because it has such a negative connotation. But they hide it. They know what they're doing. They know that they're teaching stuff that a lot of Christians will not agree with. And I can't even say most anymore because so many Christians have been sucked into this that I think they've gone over the tipping point, and I'm in the minority as far as Christians go. So that's a warning to you. If you start researching a smaller organization that seems very similar, even if you get the books, it may not teach you anything. So here's what I did after the fact, when I knew what the NAR was. I said, you know what? If I Google Circuit Riders with NAR together, what will come up? And that's when I got a lot more information where I was learning all the names of the people that were involved in YWAM and Circuit Riders and the International House of Prayer and all the other organizations that were involved. And that's when it all came together, and I knew the movement was basically taking over Christianity, and that this is a real issue, and these programs for these kids are programming them, basically, and they have to be avoided. This has already gone on really long. I hope I covered everything. If you have questions, put them down below. I will answer them. I may know more. If there's something that you need to know that I didn't cover, I may know more that I can answer. And, you know, if there's something in particular you need to hear. But basically what I'm telling you to do is to go do research on the NAR. That will tell you a lot. But if you have questions after you've done some research, and maybe a question about a particular organization, and you maybe say, hey, what about this? And you want a second look at it. I can look at it for you. There's a lot of keywords that you learn eventually that are very NAR associated. They use certain terminology, and I can usually pick a church website or an organization website and know pretty quick that it is part of the NAR movement, and kind of the red flags on there. So anyway, just be in prayer about it, do your research, and ask me any questions. I'm not a complete expert, but I know enough to either send you in the right direction or potentially maybe answer questions that you don't know about. So anyway, it's Friday morning. I don't know when you're going to see this, but have a good weekend, a good day, good week, and God bless all of you.